Chapter 11 Video leaked. Next, Obadiah conducted some simple tests on his men, including strength, agility, reaction speed, defense, and so on. He found that his subordinates' attributes in all aspects had improved a lot, with his strength increasing more than 10 times, making him almost like Superman. I also heard that Umbrella's T-virus enhancement potion will not exert all its effects immediately, but will continue to slowly strengthen afterwards. This also made him more satisfied. But unfortunately, Umbrella's strengthening potion is too expensive, otherwise I would have given each of my subordinates one. After saying this, he picked up the syringe and prepared to give himself an injection. But just then, a man came to the meeting room. "Boss, Pepper came to the company and went to Starks of CE." Hearing this, Obadiah could only put down the injection temporarily and walk out of the meeting room. Although he was wary of this woman, he wanted to make her his subordinate. After all, the other party's ability to do things and vision are indeed very good. Moreover, most of his contacts with the military depend on this woman, so he doesn't want to fall out with Pepper unless it is absolutely necessary. On the top floor of Stark building, this is Tony's of CE. At this time, Pepper was carrying a handbag, walking towards the computer desk like a guilty thief, looking back at the of CE door from time to time. After arriving at the desk, she immediately turned on the computer, and the password input interface appeared. So she inserted the USB drive Tony gave her without hesitation, and as the password was cracked, she began to check the lay. As she looked through the documents one by one, she suddenly saw the drawings and information of Amecha. District 16? "Obadiah, what are you doing?" Before opening the next folder, she watched a video. It was the video of the Dark Forces kidnapping Tony. But the dark elements inside spoke the language of the Middle East, so she couldn't understand them. But after the Dark Gangs kidnapped Tony, they did not release any video to the public or demand a ransom. So she immediately entered the command and started real-time translation. "You didn't say that the person we were asked to assassinate was Tony Stark." Hearing this, Pepper was shocked. "Oh my goodness." At this time, the video continues. "Obadiah, you must pay for your lies and deception. The price of assassinating Tony Stark has now increased." Hearing this, Pepper quickly began to copy the video, including the 16th zone and all transaction records, etc. "Oh, how should I deal with this matter?" Hearing the sound, Pepper was so frightened that her whole body trembled, and then she looked towards the door in horror. I don't know when, Obadiah stood outside the door and then walked in. When she saw that Obadiah did not look worse but just calm, she immediately came to her senses and realized that the other party did not know that she had discovered the video. This made her feel relieved, but as she looked at the LE being copied in front of her, all kinds of thoughts ashed through her mind. First of all, he must not be discovered, otherwise according to Obadiah's methods, he would definitely die. Secondly, you must copy this document and give it to Tony. At this moment, Obadiah slowly walked to the wine cabinet, poured himself some wine, and then smiled at Pepper. "I know how you feel, Pepper. Tony is sh like that, causing a lot of trouble and then leaving you to clean up the mess." Seeing this, Pepper carefully covered the USB drive with newspaper while the other party was pouring the wine and not looking at her, then smiled in response. At this time, Obadiah poured the wine and walked towards Pepper. When Pepper saw that the LE had been copied, she quickly clicked the mouse to put the computer into sleep mode. Then the computer screen instantly jumped to the screensaver screen. Obadiah saw the screensaver on the computer and didn't think much about it, but continued with a serious face, "You don't know how happy I was when Tony just came back. It's like seeing the light at the end of the tunnel." Hearing the other party acting in front of her, Pepper felt a chill in her heart. It turns out that the person who has worked with me for so long is such a sinister villain. No wonder Tony had to come to the company himself to ND the documents, otherwise he would have been sold out by such a villain and wouldn't know what was going on. But I understand now that Tony never really came back. His significant other was left in that cave, and he broke my heart. After saying this, he looked heartbroken. His words clearly meant he was going to break up with Tony. And in his mind, he already had a plan and idea to kill Tony, so he wanted to test Pepper's attitude and Reaction. If the other party's answer satisfies him, he doesn't mind killing Tony and letting the other party continue to work. But if the other party's answer does not satisfy him, then after killing Tony, the other party must be driven away. If it were in the past, Pepper would not have thought much about what Obadiah said, but after watching the video, she felt a ash of fear in her heart. He's going to take action against Tony. However, as a strong woman, she forced herself to calm down and smiled. He's a man with multiple personalities. He's been through a lot. I believe he will get better. Hearing this, a cold light ashed in Obadiah's eyes. The other party's meaning was very clear: he rejected my invitation. But this is a society ruled by law after all, and many people have seen Pepper coming here, so now is not the time to take action. After quickly weighing the pros and cons in his mind, Obadiah took a sip of his wine and nodded. You're a rare and wonderful woman, Tony doesn't know how lucky he is. Hearing this, Pepper breathed a sigh of relief. Because she knew that she survived. Thank you, thank you. The RST thank you is for the other party's grace of not killing you, and the second thank you is for the other party's compliment. I think I should go back. After saying that, Pepper unplugged the USB drive while picking up the newspaper, then left her seat and walked towards the door. As Obadiah watched Pepper leave, he always felt something was wrong. So he asked tentatively, "Is that today's newspaper?" Hearing this, Pepper was stunned for a moment, but her good psychological quality and memory allowed her to answer immediately, "Of course." Obadiah walked over suspiciously and looked Pepper up and down carefully, but there seemed to be nothing wrong. "Lend me the newspaper." Ken. After picking up the newspaper and taking a look, he found nothing suspicious. Obadiah suddenly felt that he was too suspicious and anxious. But watching Pepper walk out of the door, he was still a little worried, so he warned, "Be careful." Chapter 12 Arc Reactor. After walking out of the UFCE, Pepper looked at the USB drive in her hand and immediately breathed a sigh of relief. But it wasn't safe yet, so she quickly walked down the stairs. And in the UFCE, Obadiah opened Tony's computer, exited the screensaver, and saw the copied lay. This immediately made him angry. Pepper must have known everything. So he immediately walked out of the UFCE, came to the corridor, and saw Pepper leaving anxiously. Just when he was about to call his men to stop the other party, he saw a SHIELD agent appear and walk with Pepper. He remembered that the other person's name seemed to be Carlson, and his rank in SHIELD was not low. Damn. After a burst of low curses, he immediately walked towards the laboratory. Tony and Pepper may not know about the SHIELD department yet, but as the de facto manager of Stark Enterprises, how could he not know about it with his extensive network of contacts? SHIELD is the department of the Security Council that specializes in dealing with supernatural matters. Its strength and power are so great that even the US military has to give it some face. The only chance now is his own mecha, Iron Overlord. As long as Iron Overlord's research is successful, the military will deniedly protect him. Even if Ironmonger's research fails, he still has one last way out, which is Umbrella. However, when he thought of the conditions Luna proposed last night, he felt embarrassed. Forget it. I won't go to Umbrella unless it's absolutely necessary. In the top hour of CE of Umbrella. At this time, Li Feng was holding a coffee cup, sitting in the boss chair, leisurely looking at the report projected in front of him. At the beginning of the morning, Hong Ho started selling orders in the stock market, and a large amount of funds naturally owed into the account. This time, Red Queen used nearly $10 billion to short Stark Enterprises, and leveraged it 5 times. Now the share price of Stark Enterprises has dropped to about 1/3 of its original price. In other words, if he could sell all his short positions at the current price, he could earn about $35 billion. Yes, although it is only the price of 350 C2 viruses, this money is essentially free money, and the C2 virus is not available for sale at any time. With these $35 billion, the plan to acquire Starship can go one step further. But after thinking about it, he was not in a hurry to buy Starship Corporation's shares because he had a better idea. That is to buy Stark's shares at a low price and become a shareholder of Stark Enterprises. Because he knew that after Stark Enterprises' arc reactor was officially put into use, the stock price would reverse and even rise better than before. In other words, Stark Enterprises' stock price is now almost at its lowest point. Dong dong. At this time, there was a knock on the door. Come in. As the door opened, Luna was seen walking towards me step by step, twisting her hips and wearing high heels. Boss, the information about the armor has been obtained. After saying that, she placed a stack of printed materials in front of Li Feng. Li Feng ignored Luna's proud pair of weapons, put down the fragrant coffee, picked up the document, and began to look through it carefully. This is the design drawing of the Mark I that Tony made using some scrap metal when he was trapped in the Middle East. Although there is something here, it is not very profound. After all, the problem of speeding and overloading has not been solved, nor are there any technologies such as freezing, shock absorption, energy, palm cannon, etc. Of course, there are some techniques here that he doesn't have, and Red Queen can learn them. After looking at it for a while, he nodded with satisfaction. Yes, as long as we solve the energy problem, we can build an iron army. What did Obadiah say about the data and design drawings of the arc reactor? Since he knew that Iron Man appeared, he naturally wouldn't do nothing. But he also knew that Tony was not easy to approach, so he let Luna approach Obadiah. Although it requires some cost, it is better than Tony, a guy who is destined to be uncooperative. Hearing about the arc reactor, Luna could only shake her head helplessly. I'm very sorry, boss. Obadiah takes the arc reactor very seriously and has no intention of negotiating. Li Feng didn't say anything after hearing this. He just picked up the cooled coffee on the desk and drank it slowly. Then he raised his head, looked at Luna who looked unwilling, and said confidently, "Don't worry, he will agree to it in the evening, you can go down." Luna had no doubt about Li Feng's words. She just nodded and went out. As the OBSE returned to silence, Li Feng turned his chair and looked out the window. At this time, the sun outside was gradually setting and night was about to come. He knew that the decisive battle between Obadiah and Tony would begin soon. Red Queen, dispatch the USS Second Action Team to the Stark Energy Plant and stand by. USS stands for Umbrella Rapid Reaction Security Service, which is a secret force formed by Li Feng. Its members are all retired special forces from various countries. At the same time, they have all been strengthened by the T3 virus. They are a stronger and more professional force than security personnel. Even within Umbrella Corporation, only a few people knew about this secret force. The highest person in charge of this force is naturally Li Feng. Yes, master. After a while, Li Feng stood up, looked at the people getting off work below, with the corners of his mouth slightly raised. Things are starting to get interesting. Red Queen, after selling your short positions, buy up all the shares of Stark Enterprises. Yes, master. As the sun slowly sets, it is night time. At the Stark Energy Plant. At this time, Pepper, Carlson, and 4 other SHIELD agents were entering the factory. This factory building houses a new large-scale arc reactor and is the new energy factory of Stark Enterprises. Its daily power generation is estimated to be around 10 billion kilowatts, which is almost equivalent to the Three Gorges Dam. The reason why it is said to be expected is that the large arc reactor was only installed not long ago, and is still in the testing phase and has not yet been officially put into use. The arc reactor is also the reason why Tony dared to close the weapons research and development and production department, and even dared to say that he would no longer sell weapons in the future. As for why it is a large arc reactor, it is because Tony will not hand over the technology of miniaturizing the arc reactor. District 16, District 16, here. After walking for a while, Pepper led everyone to Area 16 in the factory. According to the information she saw at noon, Obadiah was preparing to build a battle armor in Area 16. But when she stepped forward and swiped her work card twice, she found that the access control system was lit red. Obadiah has revoked my privileges. The door won't open. Hearing this, Carlson just nodded calmly and stretched out his hand. His men immediately understood, took out a small bomb, and stuck it on the door. Please step back. Amid a series of beep, beep sounds, A slight explosion soon occurred, blowing open the door lock of Area 16. Chapter 13 Iron Man vs. Ironmonger. Boom. When Pepper and the agents of SHIELD were blowing up the door, Obadiah, who was debugging Ironmonger in Area 16, immediately heard the explosion. He immediately knew that the enemy had arrived. Damn it, hurry up. So he hurriedly climbed up the ladder and placed the arc reactor number 2 he got from Tony into the 3-meter-tall Ironmonger's chest. When he came to Area 16 to check on Ironmonger at noon, he found that his scientists had no way to miniaturize the arc reactor, so he had to go to Tony's house and take the arc reactor from Tony's chest. As for Tony, he should be dead by now because he has no arc reactor. Therefore, the enemies that come now will definitely kill me. Thinking of this, he jumped off the ladder, entered the command on the computer, then climbed up the ladder and climbed into the Iron Overlord. In fact, according to the original plot, he should have had plenty of time to debug Ironmonger. But when he came back from Tony's house in the afternoon, he was delayed a little and used the T2 virus, so his schedule was a little tight now. Just as Obadiah jumped into Ironmonger and started the robot, Pepper walked in with the SHIELD people. After seeing Ironmonger, Pepper immediately pointed at him nervously and excitedly. "That's it, shut it down." Upon hearing this, Coulson raised his pistol without hesitation. "Mr. Obadiah." Before he could niche, Obadiah drove Ironmonger forward and slapped Coulson away with one palm. Seeing this, the other 4 agents immediately pulled the trigger. Bang! 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 But how could a Glock 9 with a caliber of only 26 mm possibly penetrate the 30 mm armor of the Iron Overlord, which is made of gold titanium alloy? The bullets didn't even have the chance to leave craters on them, and those agents were shot away, one after another by Iron Overlord controlled by Obadiah. When Pepper saw that the situation was not good, she immediately ran away. Because Ironmonger was too big, he was quickly stuck in the door, allowing Pepper to escape. At the same time, in the sky above New York, a golden and red glow is ying quickly. It turned out that Tony had changed into arc reactor number 1, put on the Mark III armor with a crack on the chest, and EU towards the Stark factory. In fact, he was almost dead after Obadiah took away the arc reactor from his chest at noon. However, with his strong willpower, he went to the underground laboratory and got the Arst generation arc reactor, and installed it on his chest, thus preventing metal fragments from owing into his heart. When he was assassinated by the 10 Rings gang in the Middle East, a bomb produced by Stark Industries fell not far from him. Although the violent explosion did not kill him immediately, it left hundreds of tiny metal fragments in his body. Because there were no conditions for surgery at the time, Dr. Ethan, who treated him, simply used a magnetic ELD device to RMLY absorb the metal fragments and prevent them from owing into his heart. This is also the reason why he installed a small arc reactor on his chest. In addition to providing energy for the armor, it is also to absorb these metal fragments. Jarvis, how long can the energy of the RST generation arc reactor last? The RST generation of arc reactors were manufactured in caves in the Middle East. The workmanship was very crude, the utilization rate of palladium was not high, and the energy recovery was very slow. So it has been eliminated by him. Its energy is currently less than 48%, making it unsuitable for long-range sustained IT. He had only owned a few dozen kilometers, or even less than 100 kilometers, but so much energy had been consumed, which made him worried. You have to know that he used the 2nd generation arc reactor and EU directly to the Middle East, without even taking a rest. I understand, continue reporting. Put me through to Pepper. A moment later, he dialed Pepper's number through the built-in access system. Pepper. At this time, Pepper, who had already run to the gate of the energy plant, answered the phone and was immediately delighted when she heard Tony's voice. Tony. Tony, are you okay? I'm Annie. Before Tony could niche, Pepper immediately said anxiously, Obadiah, he's crazy. I know. He built a big robot. It's dangerous where you are, get out of there immediately. At this moment, the ground behind Pepper cracked. Click. I saw the Iron Overlord, more than 3 meters tall, crawling out from the ground. Pepper turned around and saw this, and was stunned. Obadiah, who was driving the Iron Overlord, looked at the woman in front of him and said coldly, "Pepper, I wanted to let you go, but you disappoint me so much." As he finished speaking, he raised his right hand, and the Gatling gun on it began to slowly rotate. At this critical moment, Tony Nally arrived and rushed towards Obadiah from high in the sky. "Stop!" Hearing the voice, Obadiah turned the gun without hesitation and pointed it at Tony. Zitsize! A burst of intensive gunnery hit the Mark III, but did not cause any effective damage. Tony immediately rushed to the street outside, holding Obadiah's ironmonger. So the two began to GHT continuously. But they didn't notice that 6 fully armed guys wearing devil masks appeared around them at some point. However, looking at the two robots, they did not take action immediately, but began to report to their superiors. "Boss, this is Team Omicron, we see 2 robots. Yes, 4 professionals like them. At this moment, Tony and Obadiah were more like than battling. After all, one is a company manager and the other is a scientist researcher. They don't have any combat skills and they rely entirely on the armor on their bodies to GHT, or rather, to GHT. The captain of the Omicron team expressed contempt for this. At the same time, in Umbrellas of CE, Li Fen naturally also received the news from the Omicron team, so he asked Red Queen to start projecting the battle scenes. After watching for a while, he shook his head and turned off the projection. It was indeed a GHT. But it didn't feel like a battle at all. It was obvious that they could simply attack the weak points in the joints or the energy points in the chest to cripple or even kill their opponent, but the two of them chose to attack the opponent's strongest defenses. In this regard, he could only say that professional matters should be left to professionals. Just then, another voice came from the headset. "Boss, this is the Alpha team. We have arrived at the door of Tony's villa, but we met some people." Hearing this, Li Fen immediately asked Hong Ho to start projecting. 3 people, 1 black and 2 white, appeared at the gate of Tony's villa. It turned out to be them. Chapter 14 Security Forces. The full name of USS is Umbrella Rapid Reaction Security Force. Li Fen has formed a total of 4 teams of this type. The RST team is called Alpha, and its main responsibility is to recover important technologies and assets of the Umbrella Group, or secretly plunder important technologies and assets of hostile companies. The second team is called Omicron, and is responsible for assassinating senior executives of rival companies or politicians who are hostile to Umbrella. The third team is called Epsilon, and they are responsible for protecting Umbrella's top brass. They are also the team that Luna brings with her whenever she goes out. The fourth team is called Zeta, and it is mainly responsible for supporting the other 3 teams. It is similar to a reserve team. Each of these 4 team members has been injected with T-virus enhancement agents. They look like ordinary people on the outside, and in fact, it is not an exaggeration to say that they are little Supermen. This time, in addition to sending the Omicron team to the Stark Energy plant, Li Fen also sent Alpha to Tony's villa. As for the reason, it is naturally to obtain the technology of miniaturized arc reactor. Although I don't know whether Tony has put the information in the villa, Tony is now unable to take care of himself, so this is undoubtedly the best opportunity. But I didn't expect that those guys from S.H.I.E.L.D. were so perceptive, or rather, they also wanted this technology. At this time, among the 3 people in front of Tony's luxurious villa, the leader was the black-bald man, the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., Nick Fury. On Nick's left is a beautiful woman with long brown hair and a slim gur, a level 9 agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., known as the Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff. On Nick's right was a beautiful woman with long golden hair. Her gur and appearance were no less beautiful than Natasha's, but Li Fen had no idea who she was, because he had never seen it. But this is normal. The Marvel universe he traveled through was roughly the same as the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Number 199,999, but it had mutants, the Fantastic Four, and so on. So it wouldn't be surprising if a few unrecognizable characters appeared. At the same time, Nick looked solemnly at the 12 fully armed men who appeared in front of him. Where did these guys come from? It was obvious that these people were well trained, even comparable to their SHIELD combat agents. It was unknown which force they belonged to. And it looks like he has bad intentions. Natasha whispered beside him, "Director, are we still going to search Tony's villa?" After thinking about it, Nick shook his head. Never mind. In fact, Li Feng guessed it right. The reason Nick brought people here this time was actually to ND the technology for the arc reactor. However, unlike Li Feng who wanted a smaller one, he wanted a larger one. After all, SHIELD doesn't have any special requirements for miniaturization, so the size difference isn't that big. Moreover, large size has its own advantages, such as high energy output, stable energy output and so on. Although miniaturization makes it easier to carry, it requires higher standards in materials and technology, and is also more expensive. After thinking about it, Nick took out the walkie-talkie. "Hill, I need backup." "Yes, Chief, send someone over right away." A few minutes later, 3 helicopters appeared in the sky and more than a dozen fully armed SHIELD agents jumped out. For a time, the situation was extremely tense. When Li Feng in the umbrella of CE saw this scene, he decisively ordered the Alpha team to retreat. As the saying goes, a wise man never suffers a loss in front of him. There is no need to con ICT with SHIELD here. And if you want to obtain the arc reactor technology, you don't have to take it from Tony's house. At the Stark Energy plant. At this time, Tony and Obadiah had already fought from the ground to the sky. Tony used the low temperature and low oxygen environment at high altitude to make Obadiah's iron monger lose power, falling from the sky and crashing into the factory. However, due to insufficient energy, he could only activate the emergency backup power and then slowly fell from the sky. Bang! Even with the magical shock-absorbing device, Tony felt as if his body was falling apart and was a bit overwhelmed. However, because he was worried about Pepper, he immediately called out to her after he was safe. "Pepper." Pepper, who was anxiously waiting for news, heard the voice and immediately said excitedly and worriedly, "Tony, oh, God, are you okay? My energy is almost exhausted. I need to take off my armor before I can go down." At this point, Tony thought Obadiah had fallen to his death, so he began to take off the right hand of his armor. But in the next second, Obadiah you over in the ironmonger. "It's a good idea, but you still underestimate me." To be honest, the ironmonger he manufactured was too recent and had not been tested in various extreme environments, so he suffered a great loss. However, the design of ironmonger was not simple. He activated the AI power at the last moment, so he did not fall into pieces. Ding! Obadiah controlled Ironmonger and knocked Tony's Iron Man away with one punch. Iron Man immediately ew back and punched Ironmonger. So the two of them started punching each other back and forth. It's no wonder that the captain of the Omicron team would complain about the two of them. The two men were using the most advanced armor, yet they were still ding like primitive men. It would be NE if they were good at ding, but the two of them had no attacking skills at all, they just punched each other. However, Obadiah had the upper hand in the battle at this time. After all, Ironmonger is more than 3 meters tall, while Iron Man is only about 1.8 meters tall. In addition, Ironmonger uses the second-generation arc reactor, while Iron Man only uses the first generation arc reactor. Whether in terms of size or energy, Ironmonger has the advantage. But Obadiah was only a businessman, not a warrior. So even if he had the advantage, he didn't know how to end the battle. So after ding for a while, he chose to use brute force and directly hugged Tony, wanting to use the advantage of Ironmonger's strength to strangle the other party to death. Tony, who was hugged, immediately began to panic. "Jarvis, check the status of the weapons. The palm cannon is ineffective, and the missiles are ineffective. Then use a decoy bomb." As densely packed small decoy bombs were read one after another, Iron Overlord immediately lost sight and loosened his arms. Tony took the opportunity to hide aside. "Pepper, this won't work. I can't beat him." "Tony, are you okay? Listen, I have an idea." It's to overload the Ark's reactor and blow the roof off. What are you up to? It wasn't me who did it, it was you. Hearing this, Pepper was stunned. But she nodded immediately. What do you want me to do? You go to the center console, open all the circuits, and turn off all the fuses. Okay, I've entered the plant and am turning on all the circuits. That's right, wait for my signal and activate the Arc reactor. Chapter 15, SHIELD takes action. Obadiah regretted again that the ironmonger was made in such a hurry that there wasn't even an infrared ray, and he couldn't ND the person. And at this moment, Tony Nally had a little wisdom to match it. He suddenly appeared from behind Obadiah, grabbed the wire on the back of Iron Overlord's head, and pulled it out. This immediately caused Ironmonger to lose the outside view, as well as the aiming system and so on. So Obadiah, getting impatient, grabbed Iron Man's head from behind and threw it forward. The huge inertia caused Iron Man's helmet to fall off, revealing Tony inside. Because there was no video footage, Obadiah had to open the cabin of Ironmonger. But at this moment, he had a content expression on his face, and his eyes were full of mockery and complacency. I don't really like this iron thing, Tony. But I have to admit that this armor is really nice. After crushing Iron Man's helmet with force, he threw it in front of Tony. At this time, as a villain, he activated his passive skills. Before defeating the protagonist, you must talk nonsense for a while and then let the protagonist turn the tables. You've nearly outdone yourself, Tony. Your father would be proud of you. Pepper, who was in the factory, had already turned on all the power supplies and turned off the safety devices. Everything is ready, Tony, get off the roof. The arc reactor began to emit blue light and electric current continued to out because the electricity it produced could not be released and the safety device would not stop automatically. At this time it is like a huge bomb, constantly charging energy. However, this point was obviously taken into consideration when the arc reactor was built, so a large amount of electricity was guided to the ground through ground wires. At this time, Obadiah on the roof raised his right hand, and saw the Gatling gun on Ironmonger spinning continuously. Zit-size. Dense bursts of bullets were read instantly. However, due to the damage to the aiming system and the fact that he was not a professional, he naturally drew the human body. It doesn't even count as a depiction of the human body because it's so off-center. Pepper, who heard the noise below, immediately shouted Tony's name in worry. Obadiah then put away his right hand on the roof. That's ridiculous, Tony. You wanted to rid the world of weapons, but ended up inventing the most powerful weapon the world has ever seen. But now, I am going to kill you with the weapon you made. After saying this, a content smile appeared on his face, and he raised his left hand, revealing a small rocket. Swoosh, boom. However, after ring 2 rounds, the small rocket went astray again. So he had to step forward and get closer to Tony. You may have destroyed my aiming system, but what about this? Tony saw Obadiah coming and immediately shouted, Pepper, cut the ground wire. Upon hearing this, Pepper immediately took off the button, cutting off the last protection of the Fontaine reactor and disconnecting the ground wire. Sizzle, boom. The powerful electrical energy had no way to vent, and immediately turned into an extremely powerful energy shockwave, shooting upwards. Obadiah and Tony, who were on the roof, were instantly hit by the powerful energy. However, they were protected by armor, and the energy was rushing towards the sky, so they were not turned into charcoal. They were just numb all over from the electricity and were completely unable to move. After a while, the energy of the Fontaine reactor was released and the emergency plan was automatically activated, cutting off all operations and stopping the generation of electricity. Tony, who had been electrocuted, immediately fell from the roof. Unlike the plot, Obadiah still had some consciousness at this time and did not fall with the enemy. Because he had been injected with the T-virus to strengthen himself, so he could withstand the current. Oh, Tony, it looks like your plan has failed. With a slight smile, he raised the small rocket in his left hand and aimed it downwards. At this time, Pepper had already run to Tony's side, and seeing that Tony had lost consciousness, she was very anxious. Tony, are you okay? Pepper, let's be a couple on the run with your Tony. Just as Obadiah was about to launch a rocket, suddenly a sharp arrow ew across the sky and hit the joint of Ironmonger's left hand. With a click, Iron Overlord's left hand was instantly stuck and unable to move. Turning his head, he found that 30 meters to his left, a man with a bow and arrow appeared at some point. Who are you? In response to Obadiah's question, Barton did not say anything, but just raised his bow and arrow and aimed at the other party. At this time, Obadiah's hatch was wide open. As long as he got the order from above, he would be sure to shoot him in the head with one arrow. Because he is Clint Barton, nicknamed Hawkeye, a level 7 agent of SHIELD. And he didn't come alone this time. Soon, Coulson limped to Barton with 7 or 8 agents. Dude, luckily you came in time, I almost died. He had good physicalness and did not die after being knocked away by Obadiah, but was only slightly injured. I think you'd better take someone down to check. Tony's condition is not good. Coulson glanced at Obadiah not far away and nodded. I'll leave this to you. Seeing Coulson preparing to go down, Obadiah immediately raised his right hand and Gatling kept spinning. But at this moment, a sharp arrow shot over. Swoosh. Ding. The arrow just got stuck in the Gatling gun and stopped spinning instantly. Seeing this, Obadiah was furious. Damn you. You. Just as he ejected the small missile from behind and prepared to re-it, Patton shot another arrow, which pierced his ear. Ding. I advise you not to move, otherwise I don't know where the next arrow will hit. Seeing the arrow near his ear, Obadiah's anger suddenly disappeared, and cold sweat owed down his forehead. After all, he is just a businessman, not a professional gder. If the arrow had been a little off, he would have been dead. But when he saw Coulson going down to ND Tony, he felt unwilling again. If this continues, by the time Tony recovers, I'll be nished. First of all, he will nightly be stripped of his qualications on the board of directors, and then thrown into jail, saying goodbye to his current life forever. If Tony was more cruel and had an accident, he wouldn't even have a chance to go to jail alive. What should I do? As Obadiah was getting anxious, 6 armed men followed him to the roof. Mr. Obadiah, Miss Luna has a deal she wants to discuss with you. Obadiah was immediately delighted when he heard Luna's name. No matter what the deal is, as long as you can kill Tony, everything is negotiable. Chapter 16 Obadiah's Compromise. After hearing what Obadiah said, the captain of the Omicron team simply said, Our Miss Luna wants to talk to you. Please answer the phone. Because they were in the middle of a battle, Obadiah shut down all phone communications. Hey, Ms. Luna. Yeah, I promise you, as long as you let your men cooperate with me to kill Tony. No? Why? As long as you cooperate with me to kill Tony, I can not only give you the design drawings of the Fontaine reactor, but also give you shares of Stark. You said S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't agree? Where does S.H.I.E.L.D. come from? Just as he was about to say the word SHIELD, Obadiah calmed down and looked at Coulson, who had already walked to Tony's side in the factory below. Coulson is an open agent of SHIELD, and he knows that basically all matters, big or small, are handled by him. And anyone who can be on good terms with Coulson must be a member of SHIELD. In other words, the person who shot him with the arrow just now was also from SHIELD. There are other men in black around, needless to say they are also from S.H.I.E.L.D. This all indicates one thing, that is, S.H.I.E.L.D. has intervened in the con-ICT between him and Tony. Thinking of this, his heart suddenly turned cold. He really couldn't understand why S.H.I.E.L.D., which had always been high and mighty and never interfered in the affairs of ordinary people, would intervene in the internal affairs of Stark Enterprises. Why does your S.H.I.E.L.D. want to intervene in this matter? Don't you also have a 5% stake? Obviously, I am the one who can lead Stark Enterprises to a better future and help you make more money. Yes, VE% of Stark Enterprises, SHIELD. In fact, S.H.I.E.L.D. owns more than 5% of Stark Enterprises. It also owns some shares in other top companies and groups. Otherwise, how could S.H.I.E.L.D. possibly support such a big business relying solely on the little money given by the Security Council? Unfortunately, Obadiah was destined to be disappointed. Patton completely ignored his words and still pointed the longbow at him, but his eyes were somewhat distracted to the members of the Omicron team. As members of the Omicron team, their equipment is quite good. Bulletproof vests, bullet bags, tactical backpacks, devil masks, tactical helmets, and binocular night vision goggles. Their level of armament is even better than that of SHIELD agents and is comparable to that of some Special Forces soldiers. Moreover, he had never seen the style of weapons in their hands before. They were larger than ordinary RIES and should be specially made RIES. Unali woke up. "Oh, thank God, Tony, I'm so glad you're okay, woo-woo." After the situation was deadlocked for a while, Obadiah saw Tony waking up below and heard Pepper crying with joy, and he immediately knew that his plan had completely failed. So he said into the microphone, "You win, I listen to you." On the secretary's desk outside of the top floor of CE at Umbrella, Luna smiled as she drank her coffee. Then she picked up the folder on the table and held it to her chest, then pushed open the door behind her in her high heels. "Boss, Obadiah agreed to our request as you expected." Li Feng, who was reading documents, didn't even raise his head when he heard Luna's words, but just nodded lightly. "Understood." It seemed as if he was very sure that his plans would never fail. Seeing how busy he was, Luna put the folder on the desk, then came behind him and pinched his shoulders. "Boss, I work overtime so late every day, what should I be rewarded with?" Feeling Luna's restless little hand, Li Feng Nally withdrew his energy from thinking. "Didn't I promise to go out with you last time? What do you want this time?" Hearing this, Luna smiled slightly, then turned around and sat on Li Feng, hugging his neck with both hands. "I want you to stop working so hard and have a good rest." Feeling the soft and boneless body in his arms, Li Feng gave a bitter smile. "Once I obtain the arc reactor and start EET Corporation, I will naturally have a good rest. The future multiverse crisis is like a sword of Damocles hanging over my head. I have no time to rest." After saying this, he touched the smooth black stockings with one hand and hugged the slender waist with the other hand. "Ah, then how long do we have to wait? Otherwise, let's take a break now." As soon as she finished speaking, Luna kissed Li Feng on the chin, and her hands began to move naughtily. Seeing this, Li Feng used his mental power to lift up the folder that the other party had just taken and began to IP through it, while he reacted instinctively with both hands. "Starship has already acquired 5%, it looks like the listing has been announced." "Okay, don't look at this anymore." The next morning, in the VIP ward of Columbia Hospital in New York. At this time, Tony was lying on the hospital bed, holding a newspaper in both hands. Iron Man? This name is interesting, but the word steel is not quite accurate. It is made of titanium alloy. Pepper, who was checking Tony's band-aid and wound, rolled her eyes when she heard this. "You still have the heart to think about these things." After Obadiah and the people from Umbrella left last night, there has been no news since then. I wonder what bad things they are planning. When Tony heard this, he put away the newspaper with a content look on his face. "Pepper, don't worry, I own 39% of Stark Enterprises shares, and I will re him at the board meeting this afternoon. Then charge him with murder, treason, and munitions smuggling, and make sure he's sent to jail. Mr. Stark, I may disappoint you." Just then, Coulson pushed open the door and walked in. "What happened?" Tony frowned slightly. Coulson handed the document to Tony and continued, "Early this morning, the military announced that a prototype robot had gone berserk. It had nothing to do with Obadiah. Because Ironmonger did not fall into the arc reactor, there was no explosion and the incident was easily suppressed." Before Tony could say anything, Pepper immediately shouted angrily, "How could they do this?" She really didn't understand why the military favored Obadiah. You have to know that Obadiah wanted to kill Tony last night, and as a partner of Stark Enterprises, the military actually favored Obadiah. This was really beyond her comprehension. Tony looked at the document in his hand and understood something from it. "They want the Mark II." Coulson nodded and said, "Yes, not only the Mark II, they also want the core technology of the arc reactor." There was one more thing he didn't say. That is, Tony's decision to close the Weapons Research and Development Department and stop selling weapons angered the military. They are playing with Re. Obadiah is not a good person, and he was walking with Umbrella last night. Because Umbrella saved Obadiah, in Pepper's eyes, Umbrella also became an evil company. Perhaps, it was because of Umbrella's intervention that the military agreed to protect Obadiah. After finishing speaking, Tony put down the documents in his hand, his eyes solemn. Chapter 17 Shareholders Meeting. The time soon arrived in the afternoon. Tony, wearing a straight suit and tie, slowly walked to the top floor of Stark Tower. After opening the door, I saw that the conference room was already full of people. These people are all shareholders and senior executives of Stark Enterprises, big and small. Mr. Stark, are you okay? Hello, Mr. Stark. Mr. Stark is Nally back. After a round of greetings, Tony took Pepper to the chairman's seat, and Pepper sat on his left, in the RST seat. After looking around, Tony glanced at the watch on his left hand and found that it was already 2:00. Is Obadiah not here yet? It seems that he does not plan to attend this board meeting. As soon as he finished speaking, the door of the conference room was pushed open again. Obadiah, a tall man, walked in with a bright smile on his face. Everyone, I'm very sorry that I'm a little late. Seeing the person who was once his closest relative appear, Tony didn't react much, but just nodded lightly. But soon, he noticed a blonde beauty behind Obadiah. Luna. Seeing that everyone was looking at her, Luna smiled very calmly. Hi everyone, my name is Luna. Pepper stood up at this time and said gloomily, this is the board of directors of Stark Enterprises. People who are not involved please leave. Without waiting for Luna to speak, Obadiah winked at the shareholders and said, let me introduce Luna next to me. She is the CEO of Umbrella and is here to attend the board meeting on behalf of Umbrella. I would like to remind you that Umbrella has already acquired 5% of Stark Enterprises shares. According to regulations, it does not need the chairman's consent to obtain the right to participate in the board of directors. As he finished speaking, the shareholders present stood up and applauded, expressing their welcome. Clap clap clap. Welcome Miss Luna to join our big family. I didn't expect Umbrella to also invest in it. Yes, you know, Stark Enterprises is in a turbulent time right now. Just as Luna was about to take a seat, Pepper suddenly held up a tablet and asked, why didn't I see Umbrella's listing announcement? The stock exchange didn't show any announcement either. After saying this, she looked at the other person with a puzzled look. In response to Pepper's questioning, Luna still had a smile on her face and slowly sat down in the seat belonging to the shareholder. These equity transactions were reached this morning, so the announcement has not come out yet. If Miss Pepper doesn't believe it, you can take a look at these documents. After she finished speaking, she put down the briefcase in her hand and took out documents one by one. Pepper looked at the equity transaction documents and still couldn't believe it and said, how is it possible? You can't possibly receive 5% of the equity in such a short time. Although Stark Enterprises is not as exaggerated as the trillions in the future, its market value is still 300 billion. Even if the stock price has dropped by 2/3 due to some things, it still has a market value of around 100 billion. 5% is 5 billion. Not to mention whether Umbrella has so much liquid funds, just acquiring so many shares from others is not an easy task. Hearing this, Luna raised her left eyebrow slightly, with a half smile on her face. I have to thank Mr. Stark for this. When Tony heard that this matter suddenly involved him, his brow slightly frowned. What does this have to do with me? Of course it is related. If you hadn't closed the weapons research department and terminated the transactions with the military, those fund companies, institutions, and securities companies would not have transferred their shares to our Umbrella Group so readily. And it is still 10% lower than the transaction price in the secondary trading market. In fact, if the news about Stark Enterprises was better, it would have been impossible for Li Feng to buy 5% of Stark's shares so quickly, and at a low price. But who is to blame for the series of problems that Stark Industries has encountered recently? The Weapons Research and Development Department was closed, the arms trade with the military was terminated, The arc reactor was delayed in opening, and a robot riot occurred. If these things happened to other companies, they would be a fatal blow. Although Stark Enterprises is huge, it cannot withstand such turmoil. So we can't blame Li Feng for moving so quickly. Tony and Pepper confirmed that Umbrella really had 5% of the shares. Their faces suddenly turned ugly and they had a bad feeling in their hearts. But they didn't take it too seriously and felt it was not a big problem. After all, they hold 39% of the shares, while Obadiah only holds 12%. Even if Umbrella's 5% is added, it is only 17%. They still have a big advantage. But the faces of the other shareholders darkened. Because of these recent events, their assets have shrunk by 2/3. Currently, Stark's market value is around 100 billion, and the shares they hold are not cheap. If they want to sell them at this time, they can only sell them below the market price like those fund companies, institutions, and securities companies. Isn't this tantamount to asking for their lives? Thinking of this, some small shareholders looked at each other and nodded in tacit understanding. After some minor twists and turns, the shareholders' meeting of Chailey began. And Pepper was still the RST to attack. The RST thing to do at this shareholders' meeting is to remove Obadiah from his position as CEO. He will also not be allowed to attend any shareholders' meetings of Stark Enterprises in the future. Hearing this, Obadiah remained calm, but the small shareholders started to make a commotion. Why did you Obadiah? Without him, the company's performance would drop dramatically. What happened? Obadiah is a veteran of the company. Yes, the company can't do without him. Although Obadiah is a villain to Tony, he is a very good CEO to ordinary shareholders. After all, almost 50% of Stark Enterprises' revenue was handled by Obadiah, and the positions of managers and general managers of some key departments were also held by Obadiah's condance. If Obadiah were read rashly, not to mention how much Stark Enterprises' stock price would drop, half of its departments would probably be paralyzed. Facing the questions from the small shareholders, Pepper had no intention of explaining, but just said coldly, "Raise your hands and vote now." If she hadn't been careless last night and handed over the USB drive that copied Obadiah's crimes to the military, she wouldn't have been so passive. Now that the military was clearly favoring Obadiah and hadn't even made an arrest, she knew things were bad and decided to just vote. Chapter 18 Interlocking. After Pepper said to raise hands to vote, Tony immediately raised his hand. But none of the people below took action. They just looked at Tony and Pepper coldly. Pepper was not disappointed with this, but continued, "Now the votes in favor account for 39% of the shares. According to the Articles of Association of the shareholders' meeting, those who oppose can now raise their hands. Those who abstain from voting will not be counted in the equity." Just as she was about to persuade everyone to abstain from voting, she saw all the small shareholders raising their hands, followed by Obadiah and Luna. This immediately made Pepper and Tony's faces look ugly. Although these small shareholders don't hold much shares, only 1% or 2%, they are numerous. Adding Obadiah and Luna's shares, it has reached 41%, 2 points more than them. From this we can also see how popular Obadiah is. You have to know that when he didn't have the 5% stake in Umbrella, he was able to unite everyone to remove Tony from the position of chairman, let alone now. At this point, Pepper stopped talking. After all, she was still young and had only been in Stark Enterprises for 3 years. This was also her RST time seeing Obadiah's prestige, and she was a little caught off guard. After a while, seeing the silence at the scene, Obadiah said confidently, 41 to 39%, "It seems that this shareholders' meeting will disappoint you. Okay, now for the second vote, Tony will leave the shareholders' meeting and no longer be involved in Stark Enterprises affairs." Hearing this, Tony immediately stood up and shook his head. "No, you can't do this, this is Stark Enterprises, I am Stark." What made him despair was that most of the small shareholders raised their hands. However, some of the company's veterans still missed Tony's father very much, so they did not raise their hands. At one point, the vote on site reached 38%, but it was not enough to pass the resolution. Obadiah then looked at several company elders and said viciously, "Do you still want this kid to Continue to destroy Stark Enterprises? If Howard saw Stark Industries today, do you think he would be happy or sad? The only way to save Stark Enterprises now is for me to take charge of Stark Enterprises, reopen the Weapons Research and Development Department, and accept orders from the military. Seeing that the elders seemed to be interested, he continued, I promise that in 1 year, the market value of Stark Enterprises will return to 300 billion. Or even higher. Upon hearing this promise, the eyes of several elders immediately lit up and they all wanted to raise their hands. Although they watched Tony grow up and have a lot of affection for him, affection cannot be eaten. You have to know that the 1% of the shares in their hands were worth 3 billion in the past, but now it is only 1 billion. What kind of relationship can be worth 2 billion? Tony became anxious when he saw these veterans also raising their hands. Uncle Nunez, Uncle Hidalgo, you can't do this. Stark Enterprises can't do without me. Only I can lead the company to become stronger. The two people named were Howard's good friends and were very old. At this moment, they looked at Tony with their hands raised RMLY. Tony, I know you're a good kid, but we have to eat too. Yeah, Tony, the stock price has dropped so much recently that my family can barely make ends meet. Without waiting for Tony to continue persuading him, Obadiah said excitedly, 40% to 39%. Tony, you're out. Come on. Although one veteran shareholder did not raise his hand in the end, it did not affect the overall situation. And Tony also turned his attention to the last person. If he could get that 1% of the other party's shares, it would be 40 to 40, and he still had a chance. But before he could speak, the man turned his head. The meaning is very clear. For Howard's sake, he will not participate in the raising of hands, but asking him to support Tony is impossible. Just when Tony was feeling discouraged, Pepper suddenly stood up. No, there is another shareholder who did not participate in this shareholders meeting. Who? SHIELD. When Tony heard the word S.H.I.E.L.D, he immediately remembered that SHIELD also had a 5% stake. If he could get the help of SHIELD, he still had a chance. Pepper said, I am now applying to suspend the shareholders meeting and continue in half an hour. Now it was Obadiah's turn to look unhappy. If SHIELD takes action, it can indeed play a crucial role. Wouldn't everything they had done be in vain by then? You know, in order to get the support of these small shareholders, he made a lot of promises last night and gave up a lot of interests. Thinking of this, he looked at Luna, hoping that she could come up with some solution. But Luna still had a content smile on her face and just nodded at him. There is no problem with Miss Pepper's application, but if the voting result remains unchanged in half an hour, I will be sorry. Pepper glanced at Luna and said nothing, but stood up and left with Tony. After walking out of the conference room, Pepper immediately took out her cell phone to contact Carlson. Hello, the user you dialed has been turned off. On the other end of the phone, there was a sound of the phone being turned off. Shut down. Pepper felt uneasy and called again. But no matter how many times she called, the number Carlson left for her was always turned off. Tony watched Pepper continue to make calls and asked in confusion, what's wrong? The phone is turned off. Why is the phone turned off at this time? Try again. At this time, Luna walked out of the meeting room, looked at the two people in front of her, and suddenly smiled. I heard that someone reported to the Security Council last night that SHIELD was interfering in the affairs of ordinary people. If I'm not mistaken, they should still be being interrogated now. The current SHIELD is not yet the fully edged SHIELD of the future, or even the SHIELD that has evolved into SHIELD. Therefore, SHIELD is still subject to monitoring and supervision by the Security Council. The rules set when SHIELD was established were to protect ordinary people from being threatened by extraordinary beings and from being attacked by ultra-advanced technology. At the same time, SHIELD is strictly prohibited from interfering in the affairs of ordinary people. Last night's real name report immediately resulted in SHIELD being supervised and questioned by the Security Council. Tony and Pepper paled when they heard this. But Pepper continued to make calls without giving up. Half an hour later, Carlson's phone was still unreachable, so the board meeting continued. Another vote, same as before. This also made Tony and Pepper lower their heads, like defeated roosters, completely losing the content attitude they had at noon. Seeing this, Obadiah immediately asked the security guard to drag Tony out of the company. Without Tony as his backer, Pepper was read from his job. From then on, Stark Enterprises entered the era of Obadiah's control. Chapter 19. Never change your original intention. Night. In Tony's villa. Tony sat on the sofa with a thoughtful look on his face, his head down, not knowing what he was thinking. Pepper also sat beside Tony in a daze, her mind full of the scene of herself being kicked out. She never thought that one day she would be kicked out of the company in such a miserable way. In the morning I thought Obadiah would nightly go in, but unexpectedly, the appearance of Umbrella shattered all fantasies. At this point they can say that they have completely lost. According to regulations, unless there is an emergency, the board of directors can generally only meet once a month. In other words, even if they got the support of S.H.I.E.L.D., it would take a month before they could hold a board meeting. She didn't believe that according to Obadiah's methods, he would give them a month without taking any action. Sure enough, she soon received news from one of her subordinates who was still in the company. Obadiah applied to the CSRC for a Nansing quota of 1 billion shares. Upon hearing the news, Pepper felt her heart twitch and feel uncomfortable. Currently, Stark Enterprises has only 1 billion shares in total, and the share price is 100 per share. If the SEC approves the proposal, the number of Stark Enterprises shares will double and the equity will also be diluted. Tony's 39% stake became 19.5%. By then, even if S.H.I.E.L.D. supports them, the equity will not be enough. When she thought of this, she immediately told Tony everything with great concern. But Tony's reaction was very calm. He just nodded lightly. This made Pepper confused. Tony, what's wrong with you? Nothing. Don't you know what equity dilution means? We may never be able to go back. Maybe it's better not to go back. At this point, Tony sighed slightly. The vote by shareholders and senior executives this afternoon completely broke his heart and also made him understand some things. He once thought he was indispensable to Stark Enterprises. But what happened at noon told him that the company no longer needed him. Maybe letting go is the best option. After all, I am just a scientific researcher and probably not suitable for management. When Pepper heard Tony's discouraging words, her eyes widened and she looked at him in disbelief. But thinking about his past, she felt that this was Tony's character. After all, the other party had always been a hands-off boss. Every day he was either dating a Victoria's Secret girl or taking a bath with some small star, and he rarely even went back to the company. But now is the most difficult time, the other party must not be discouraged. Thinking of this, she said, Tony, Stark Enterprises is what your father left to you, and Mr. Howard certainly doesn't want to see Stark Enterprises become an accomplice in the massacre of civilians. So you must cheer up and never give up. Faced with Pepper's pua, Tony looked at her strangely. Pepper, I'm very sorry, I'm not suited to management. I'll leave everything to you from now on. I have other things to do. When he heard about the massacre of civilians, he suddenly remembered that he had other things to do. So after saying this, he got up and went to the laboratory. Jarvis, are there any new discoveries about the gene we found last time? That insect man did not have the X gene, so he is not a mutant and is most likely some kind of enhanced human. Since the United States proposed the Super Soldier Plan in 41, and Dr. Abraham Erskine created Captain America, the world has started Super Soldier Plans one after another, such as the Round Table Knights meeting of the Sunset Empire, Captain Sunset, and the Red House Plan of the North Bear Country to cultivate the Black Widow. He even heard that the Osborn Group had new enhancement technology. So he had a vague premonition that the Insect Man was an enhanced person of some evil force. He hated the fact that the Ten Rings gang used this enhanced technology to enslave civilians in the Middle East and killed countless people. He even felt that he had the responsibility and obligation to eliminate this evil force. Mr. Stark, I'm very sorry, I don't have any new endings. Well, it seems I need to ND some professional people. On the other side, Pepper saw Tony rushing into the laboratory and could only shake her head helplessly, then went about her own business. At the same time, A banquet was being held in Obadiah's villa. Most of the shareholders and senior executives of Stark Enterprises were seen holding wine glasses and laughing happily. Waiters carrying wine glasses and food kept walking through the crowd. A moment later, Obadiah, wearing a neat suit, walked to the scene holding his wife's hand. When the people around him saw him, they immediately raised their glasses. Let us congratulate Obadiah. To Obadiah, cheers. To create greater glory for Stark Enterprises. Seeing this, Obadiah also responded by raising his glass one by one, showing great enthusiasm. After all, it is thanks to these shareholders that he was able to come back to life today, so he will naturally not ignore them. After a while, he saw Luna sitting alone in a corner not far away, so he took his wife's hand and walked over. Ms. Luna, this is my wife, Elena. When Luna heard the voice, she turned to look at the other party and his wife, then raised the glass in her hand. Hello, Mrs. Stanny. American women take their husband's surname after they get married. So no matter what Elena's last name was before, it is now the same as Obadiah's, Stanny. Elena was a woman in her 40s with long yellow hair and snow-white skin, wearing a tight purple high-slit evening gown. At the same time, some SHI lines can be seen on the face, and the wrinkles are more obvious when smiling. Hello, Miss Luna. After the three of them greeted each other, Luna said to Obadiah, congratulations. From now on, you will have the NAL say in Stark Enterprises. Ha ha. Obadiah laughed heartily for a moment, then raised his glass. Thank you for your advice and help, otherwise I would not have been able to get through this crisis. This is a toast to you. After saying this, he drank the wine in his hand in one gulp. This immediately made Elena next to her frown slightly, feeling distressed. Be careful, the doctor said you can't drink too much. Obadiah looked nonchalant and said confidently, it's okay, dear. I am better now than ever before. After saying this, he patted his chest to show that he was physically strong. Since being injected with the T2 virus enhancement, his body functions have returned to their peak. At this moment he felt that he could even arm wrestle with a tiger. Chapter 20 Reactor Explosion. After the three of them chatted for a while, Obadiah suddenly sent Elena away. Ms. Luna, I think we should seize the opportunity and start the next cooperation immediately. He was able to win the board's victory by promising to bring the stock price back to its peak in a year. So he was a little impatient to start the cooperation. Hearing this, Luna put down the wine glass in her hand, looked at the people not far away, and then walked towards the garden. When Obadiah saw this, he immediately realized that there were too many people here and it was not suitable for conversation. So he immediately followed Luna and walked towards the garden. After a while, they came to the depths of the garden. Cooperation will definitely take place, but there is no rush. Why? Are you sure that the shareholders will continue to listen to you after the stock price goes back up? Hearing this, Obadiah fell silent. Because he knew that Stark Industries' surname was Stark after all, not Steinke. And today's victory was also very dangerous, 40-39. Those company veterans miss Howard very much and may betray him at any time. He didn't have any better solution for this and could only hope that his results would convince everyone. But if Tony suddenly came to his senses one day and promised not to close the weapons research and development and production department and continue to do business with the military, he felt that he had no chance of winning. Seeing that Obadiah kept his head down and didn't speak, Luna continued, what we need to do now is not to raise the stock price immediately, but to suppress it, and then apply for newly issued stocks. And also buy as much equity as possible from other people. Obadiah was slightly stunned. Suppress the stock price? But I promised them that I would raise the stock price. Although he is a villain who is dedicated to the company, not a proteer. Promise. There was a hint of disdain in Luna's eyes. You promised to wait a year, but isn't it too early now? After thinking about it, Obadiah gritted his teeth. I understand, Miss Luna, what should we do now? Don't worry, Mr. Obadiah, I will tell you slowly later, but I want to collect the interest RST. Let's have someone prepare the data for the arc reactor tomorrow. Ken. The next morning. In Tony's villa. Pepper stood in the living room, looking at the information in front of her. The more she looked, the more her brows furrowed, and the more pressure she felt. A moment later, Tony came downstairs in his pajamas. "Good morning, Pepper." After saying hello, he went to the refrigerator, took out a box of ice milk and drank it directly, then picked up a few biscuits and ate them. After filling my stomach and just putting down the milk carton, I saw Pepper appear in front of me. "Huh? Why did you suddenly appear? You scared me." Pepper's face was solemn at this time. "Tony, this is far more serious than we thought." Tony came and sat on the sofa with a nonchalant look on his face. "Tell me the story." "Last night and this morning, I took a close look at Umbrella through Jarvis. Do you know what I found?" Without waiting for Tony to ask, Pepper came to Tony and continued, "Umbrella's main industries are two types, cosmetics and medical. Among them, skincare water and whitening cream are the most famous cosmetics, accounting for 30% of the global market share. Among them, facial masks, essences and lipsticks are famous. The situation in the medical field is even more exaggerated. You know the RST-AIDS spray, which is a very famous product in recent years. Any wound can stop bleeding with just a spray. This is a product of Umbrella. In addition, Umbrella also holds patents for more than 150 types of drugs, including anti-cancer drugs, anti-leukemia drugs, etc. There is also a common cold medicine on the market, which is also a product of Umbrella. These drugs account for 11% of the global market share. No wonder the Osborne Group kept saying in the past few days that it must not be surpassed by Umbrella. In my opinion, except for the US market, Osborne has long been surpassed by Umbrella. The reason why Pepper regards the 11% market share of pharmaceuticals as more important than the 30% share of cosmetics is because of the difference in market share. You should know that the current global market size of cosmetics is only about 800 billion, while the market size of pharmaceuticals has reached about 7,400 billion. The nearly tenfold gap represents 11% of the pharmaceutical market share, which is almost 90% of the cosmetics market share. But after hearing what Pepper said, Tony still looked indifferent. "Hey, Pepper, don't be so nervous. We don't have any major contests with Umbrella. They are just cooperating with Obadiah. But who knows how long this kind of cooperation can last. Besides, Stark Enterprises won't get many arms orders without the new weapons I researched, so they will still have to come to me when the time comes." After saying this, he showed a content look again. Although he was hit hard by those shareholders and senior executives yesterday, as a man like Iron Man, he will not be easily defeated. Because he understood that the reason why Stark Enterprises was able to surpass other arms dealers and become the #1 supplier to the US military, in addition to its good quality, was because of his genius mind. There is no other company that can supply all kinds of powerful modern weapons. Now that Stark Enterprises has not upgraded itself, it can only sell the old weapons and equipment. Naturally, it will not be able to sustain it for too long and will be overtaken by other arms dealers. After listening to Tony's explanation, Pepper thought about it and felt the same way, so she breathed a sigh of relief. Just when the two were quiet, Jarvis' voice suddenly rang out. "Mr. Stark, I think there is some news that you should read." "Oh? What news?" "I'll broadcast it to you." The next second, a projection appeared in front of Tony and Pepper. The person in the picture is Obadiah. At this time, the other party was wearing a very formal suit and tie. Especially the bald head, which was shiny and oily. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As the CEO of Stark Enterprises, I am deeply sorry to inform you of this news. The explosion that occurred at the arc reactor last night was caused by an employee's operational error, who rashly started the immature reactor without ensuring safety facilities. Although no one has died so far, 7 people have been hospitalized with serious injuries." When the reporters in front of Obadiah heard this, they immediately pressed the shutter button frantically to take pictures. After a while, it was time for reporters to ask questions. The reporters are most concerned about 2 things at this time. The RST is when the arc reactor will mature, and the second is whether Tony Stark has really left Stark Enterprises. Regarding these 2 issues, Obadiah expressed concerns about the technology of the arc reactor. and would consider whether to terminate this technology. As for Tony's departure, he expressed his approval. Following the release of this news, as soon as the stock market opened in the morning, Stark Enterprises' stock price was once again plunged. The last time this happened, it was Tony who said he would no longer sell arms.